There are transits that touch the surface, nudging, whispering, gliding across our lives like wind across skin. And then there are transits that plunge, that submerge us into the cavernous places of self, that unearth symbols long buried in the unconscious, returning them to the fire for refinement, remembrance, and release. Mars in Scorpio is one of those. From September 22nd to November 4th, 2025, Mars, the planet of drive, will, instinct, and fire, descends into Scorpio's underworld. But this isn't the aggressive Mars of Aries, cutting forward. This is the alchemic Mars, the tantric Mars, the Mars that says, go inward, go deeper, go where it all began. And in that descent, images began to arrive. I was soaking in water when they came, the trine of the fire signs, Aries, Leo, Sagittarius, speaking not as separate archetypes, but as a loop, a recursion, a return, each glyph revealing something often unseen. Aries, the ram whose horns curved like the fallopian tubes of the sacred feminine, a V not for victory but for vessel, a gateway. Leo, ruled by the sun, the glyph, a perfect circle with a flame, tipped tail, the bullseye, the heart, the nucleus of the self. And then Sagittarius, the arrow, aimed, focused, not away from the self, but towards it, into the heart of the sun, the center of the circle, the place of return. And what emerged was this: the arrow does not leave the body to escape. It leaves to remember, to pierce, and to return through the fire of the heart, through the cervix of becoming, through the ram's gate, erupting, not destructive, but revelation. This is the invitation of Mars and Scorpio, to descend into what has been buried, to track the arrow not as hunter, but as a midwife, to feel the fire not as masculine force, but as feminine origin. Scorpio is fixed water, the ocean beneath the ocean, and Mars here is not impulsive, it's surgical, penetrative, intentional. Mars in Scorpio doesn't start wars, it uncovers motives. It peels away the surface of desire to reveal the primordial layers beneath. And here's what's astrologically significant about this particular transit. Mars enters Scorpio on September 22nd, initiating a 6-week window where we are asked to confront inner and outer power dynamics. Just days later, Mars forms a quincunx to Neptune on September 23rd and Uranus September 24th, destabilizing our perceptions, blurring boundaries, fracturing structures we thought were secure. These are awkward, forced recalibrations. The arrow wobbles, the aim must adjust. Then the square to Pluto tightens, exacting pressure. Mars in the sign of shared resources, sexuality, death, and rebirth. Pluto in Aquarius, the collective architect, the digital shadow, the future's gatekeeper. This square will pressurize control dynamics, both personally and culturally. What cannot transform must die. What can will reemerge raw, purified, potent. There are also subtle harmonics at play. Mars forms a biquintile to Saturn and semi-sextile to the Sun. These are the lesser heard tones in the chord, the structure within the transformation, the sacred containment. Saturn says, supply your will with precision. The Sun whispers, illuminate the unseen. All of this under the surface, all of it returning not just to power, but to original fire. Fire through the signs, a spiral, not a line. When we typically speak of the fire signs, Aries, Leo, Sagittarius, we think of them as separate stations. But under the Scorpio lens, they appear as a cycle, a loop, a toroidal breath of emergence, revelation, and return. Aries is the beginning, not just of the zodiac, but of incarnation. The glyph becomes anatomy. The horns are not aggressive, but anatomical. Fallopian tubes. Womb horns, a portal. Leo is the center, the bullseye, the solar heart, but also the illusion of identity. We are asked, is your light real or borrowed? Is your sun your source or your performance? Sagittarius as the trajectory, not as only outward. The arrow aims to pierce the illusion, to enter the sun, not to escape it, to activate the radiant seed and bring it back into form. In this Mars and Scorpio window, the fire becomes internal. The sun becomes a womb. The arrow becomes the sperm piercing the egg of awareness. And the ram becomes not a fighter, but a birther. This is not masculine energy in its rawest form. This is what happens when the masculine becomes willing to serve the feminine's deeper current, the erotic intelligence of death, transformation, and return. What this transit illuminates? Well, Mars in Scorpio asks, where have you mistaken intensity for depth, power for presence, desire for destiny? It may illuminate old lovers, old hurts, not as nostalgia, but as unfinished threads still pulsing with meaning, ancestral patterns, the places in your lineage where desire was denied, suppressed, or weaponized, symbols you've overlooked, the glyphs on your altar, the tattoos on your skin, the everyday images suddenly glowing with new meaning. And perhaps most importantly, it brings us back to the feminine as origin, not in gender, but in function. Scorpio does not initiate from ego. It initiates from the depths, from the womb, from the place before the name. If you feel disoriented in this window, good. If you feel pressure in your dreams, in your pelvis, in your psyche, breathe with it. This is not a transit of clarity. It is a transit of depth. Let the arrow pierce the sun of your own being. Let the circle collapse. Let the eruption come, not to destroy, but to reveal. The fire that lives in you is not linear. It spirals. And as Mars descends, the arrow returns through the heart, through the glyph, through the ram, through the root. This is the fire that births. This is Mars in Scorpio.